In the year 3994 BBY, somewhere in the Outer Rim, a boy was born. Being Force-sensitive, the Jedi took the boy at a young age and brought him back to the Jedi Order. Unbeknownst to them at the time, though, this boy would come to shape galactic events in a way that were unprecedented at the time. His true origins remain a mystery, and the boy, Revan, remembered little to nothing about his family. From the beginning, Revan showed exceptional talent in the Force, far exceeding the other initiates in his year. He was a natural prodigy and trained under several Jedi Masters, constantly seeking out their knowledge and trying to widen his own perspective with their different insights. His curiosity to understand the mysteries of the Force was relentless. This eagerness earned him a lot of praise from the Jedi Masters, as even the Jedi High Council took note of the young student that seemed to be excelling at the young age, with most of them growing rather fond of him. During his training as a Padawan, Revan formed a close bond with another student, Malak. The two became close friends and were considered inseparable. Together, they rose through the ranks, eventually becoming Jedi Knights around the year 3964 BBY. Revan was widely seen as the leader of the two, though, being more powerful, more intelligent, and more charismatic than Malak. Yet they complemented each other well, and Malak gave Revan a sparring partner whom he could share his thoughts with. They both passed their Padawan training with ease and were on the best way to become Knights of the Jedi Order. Chapter 2: The Revanchist Movement. During the years they trained to become Jedi Knights, the galaxy faced a growing threat. By 3965 BBY, when Revan was 29, the Mandalorian Wars had begun spreading, pushing into Republic space. The Mandalorians, a culture of warriors that lavished themselves in conquest, had launched a full-scale invasion of the Outer Rim, invading several planets and expanding the Mandalorian Wars into a galactic crisis for the Republic. The Jedi Council, however, chose not to intervene. They believed that joining the war would lead Jedi down a dark path, preferring to remain neutral. This stance led many Jedi to disagree with that decision. One of the most outspoken ones was Revan. He was outraged by their inaction and began rallying others to oppose the Mandalorians directly. He argued that standing aside while the Republic as well as millions suffered was a betrayal of Jedi principles. Revan's stance resonated with many. Some Jedi began joining his cause in trying to persuade the Council to take action, the first among them being his close friend Malak. As Revan's movement grew, he became the unofficial leader of the group that would come to be known as the Revanchists. Determined to find evidence to present to the Jedi Council, Revan led his followers on a scouting mission to the Mandalorian moon of Dixon. The findings of Dixon were disturbing, as he was able to witness the Mandalorians' brutality firsthand, seeing slaves and prisoners of war being tortured. Revan quickly returned to Coruscant to report to the Jedi Council. Despite the gravity of his findings, the Council still refused to act. Frustrated beyond comprehension, Revan kept pushing for Jedi involvement in the war. He couldn't stand idly by as the galaxy was falling into chaos and civilians were being harmed. By now, his cause had caught fire across the Republic. The Republic media elevated him as a heroic figure, someone willing to act when the Jedi Council would not. His leadership solidified the identity of the movement, and public perception cast him as a charismatic savior of the Republic. The Revanchist movement had gained a lot of momentum. Chapter 3: Origin of the Mask. By 3963 BBY, Revan was no longer just a voice of dissent. He had become a movement. Restless with the Jedi Council's refusal to intervene in the growing Mandalorian threat, he roamed the galaxy, speaking to anyone who would listen. Due to his charismatic personality, he was able to get more and more Jedi to join his cause. One of them brought him to his devastated homeworld of Cathar. Cathar had been abandoned for years, but no one really talked about why that was. Only thing that was known was that the Mandalorians had something to do with it. When Revan set foot on the planet, though, he knew that there had been a catastrophe. It was a world of complete silence, a ghost world. Everyone on the planet had been killed, the entire population gone. After seeing this horror, Revan started bringing other Jedi to the planet, hoping that if they could see the emptiness for themselves, they'd finally understand that the Mandalorians had to be stopped. While on Cathar, another planet, Sirocco, fell. The Mandalorians bombed it from orbit with nuclear warheads. From several sectors away, Revan felt it. a psychic shockwave of death. Thousands of lives extinguished in seconds. It was one of those moments that broke something inside him and hardened his determination even more that the Mandalorians had to be stopped, no matter the cost. They were monsters. Meanwhile, Jedi politics were shifting. They no longer wanted to tolerate the Revanchist movement slowly dragging them into the war. Thus, they issued a recall order for every member, even authorizing their detention if needed. A group of Jedi Masters on order of the Council followed Alec and went to Cathar to get Revan. Alec at this point had adopted a new identity, calling himself Captain Malak, as a small act of defiance against the Jedi. The Jedi Masters wanted to detain Revan, telling him to come back to Coruscant and disband the Revanchist movement. Amidst the discussions, though, something unexpected happened. Revan saw that he was standing atop an object buried in the sand. It was a Mandalorian mask. The moment he touched it, everything changed. A Force vision hit them all: Revan, Malak, and the Jedi Masters who had followed them to Cathar. They saw the past come to life around them. On a beach nearby, hundreds of Cathar were fleeing for their lives, chased by Mandalorian soldiers under the command of Kaas Fett. When the Jedi tried to intervene and stop the advancing Mandalorians, their lightsabers all but passed through the scene. It was just a memory, not reality. They could only watch as the Cathar people were herded into the sea. One Mandalorian then broke ranks, standing between Fett and the helpless civilians. He begged for mercy, insisting the Cathar were already defeated. Fett's reply was cold. The Cathar had dishonored the Mandalorians during the last war. They would be erased. With that, the Mandalorians opened fire, killing everyone. The rebel Mandalorian chose to die with the Cathar, and his body got swallowed by the ocean. And the mask Revan had found? It was his. When the vision ended, Revan picked up the mask and placed it over his face. He made a vow, one that would echo across the galaxy. He would not take off the mask until the Mandalorians were brought to justice. With several masters having witnessed the vision on Cathar, they could no longer ignore the brutality of the Mandalorians. The massacre on Cathar changed the conversation, and Jedi Council decided to give Revanchist more leeway. Officially, they still disapproved of Revan's path. Unofficially, they couldn't justify stopping him anymore. The atrocities of the Mandalorian war crimes had a way of silencing debates. However, they still didn't want to lead the entire order into war, and also didn't want too many Jedi to join Revan's cause that they were certain would lead them all down a dark path. Revan thus proposed a compromise to let the Revanchist be deputized into the Republic military, not as Jedi, but as a mercy corps, something like a civilian aid force with military backing. This meant that the Jedi wouldn't officially be involved, but that the Revanchist could now actually officially be part of the Republic military and lead their forces. The Council, under pressure from the public and their own guilt, finally agreed. Revan had his army, he had a cause, and now he had permission to fight. Chapter 4: The Mandalorian Wars. In the weeks that followed, Revan and his fellow Revanchist Jedi fully committed to the Republic war effort. They weren't just advisors anymore, they were on the front lines, fighting beside soldiers in battles across the galaxy. By then, one Jedi in particular had risen in Revan's ranks, Meetra Surik. She quickly proved herself indispensable, being one of Revan's most trusted and capable lieutenants. Revan's reputation across the Republic military grew fast. His military campaigns were very successful. In 3962 BBY, he and Malak saved the Republic from what could have been a crushing loss at the Battle of Duro. Even the Senate took notice of Revan's victories. Seeing him as a supreme leader that could turn the tide, Supreme Chancellor Tol Kressa appointed Revan as Supreme Commander of the Republic forces. Along with the title, Kressa handed Revan direct control over a full third of the Republic's military. That much power placed in the hands of a single Jedi was unprecedented. But few questioned the decision. Revan was winning the war for them. As Supreme Commander, and with this many soldiers under his command, the Republic finally started pushing the Mandalorians back. But the war had slowly shown its toll on Revan. Both him and Malak had started to adopt a new mindset. Victory was everything. Morality, civilian lives, even planets, those were secondary concerns. If sacrificing one world meant saving 5 others, they did it. If a brutal tactic could end a battle faster, they used it. Their strategies became colder, more calculating. Over time, the line between them and the enemy began to blur. They weren't fighting like Jedi anymore. They were fighting to win, and if that meant playing as dirty as the Mandalorians, they'd still do it. They were edging closer and closer towards the dark side. During this same period, Revan and Malak made a discovery that would set the course for everything that followed. Near the Jedi Enclave on Dantooine, they found an ancient ruin built by the Rakata, a long-extinct species. After passing the temple's riddles, the inner chambers opened up. Before they stepped through, Malak hesitated. He warned Revan that going any further could get them expelled from the Jedi Order. But Revan didn't care. Too far gone were the Jedi's teachings, and he saw them as purely limiting his own ambition. He pressed on, and inside, they found a star map, an ancient device that revealed parts of the location of a mysterious space station called the Star Forge. Over the next year, Revan found another star map, this one hidden deep within the Shadowlands of Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld. But as the war was still raging on, he couldn't dedicate the time to finding the other star maps. The most significant discovery came when Revan visited Malachor 5, a planet steeped in dark-side energy. There, buried in its crust, he found the Treyas Academy, an old Sith temple filled with the ancient Sith knowledge. Revan, ever the student, eagerly began studying its secrets. Slowly, he fell under the influence of the dark side and the Sith teachings, seeing that they made sense, especially for the war they were in. He shared the knowledge with Malak, cementing them both down the dark path. The two heroes had fallen. Even after turning, though, Revan and Malak didn't abandon the Republic. Revan still wore the robes of a Jedi and continued leading the fight against the Mandalorians. The war was heavily fought. At the Jaga's cluster, they suffered a devastating defeat against Cassius Fett's forces. Meetra Surik, at this point, had been promoted to general and was ordered to strike at the Mandalorian strongholds on Onderon and Duxon. Despite being outnumbered and worn down, Surik followed through on her orders. The Battle of Duxon was long and bloody. The Republic paid a heavy price, with 10 soldiers falling for every Mandalorian casualty. The death toll was mounting, and the Jedi were faced with the brutal reality of war. The dark side was stronger than ever before. To draw the Mandalorians into a final confrontation, Revan attacked Althir III, devastating much of the Mandalorian military in the process. Around the same time, he commissioned the construction of a superweapon known as the Mass Shadow Generator, a weapon capable of manipulating the unstable gravitational fields around Malachor's unstable atmosphere. He knew that the weapon could mean an end of the war. The plan was simple. He would use the Mass Shadow Generator as a trap in the Malachor system. General Surik would command half the Republic fleet and serve as bait, drawing the Mandalorians into position. Then, Revan and the rest of the fleet would attack Mandalore's flagship directly. As the Mandalorians arrived in the system, the two fleets crashed over Malachor 5. Mandalore the Ultimate, the leader of the Mandalorians, slowly came to the realization that his forces couldn't win this battle, fully aware that a defeat at Malachor could mean the end of their ambitions. Thus, he issued a final challenge, a one-on-one duel to the death against the Republic leader, just as was Mandalorian tradition. Only the strongest warrior shall rule. Revan agreed. Aboard the bridge of Mandalore's flagship, the two leaders fought their final battle. Mandalore was a warrior in every sense of the word, extremely skilled and strong, but Revan's skill proved to be greater. In the end, Mandalore the Ultimate fell. Dying and coughing up blood, he removed his mask and spoke his final truth. He told Revan that he hadn't started the war of his own volition and had been betrayed. A red-skinned Sith had approached him years earlier, luring him into uncovering a Sith tomb on the ice planet of Rekiad. That Sith had planted the idea of war and twisted it into something bigger. Mandalore had been used. With his last breath, he gave Revan the coordinates to Rekiad, hoping to prove what he said was true. Revan nodded. Standing over the body of the Mandalorian leader, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Was the whole war really a setup? Was there an even greater threat somewhere out there? Revan removed Mandalore's mask and took it with him. With their leader gone, the Mandalorians were cornered and desperate. The Republic forces pushed them back toward Malachor 5. When the time came, Surik gave the order to activate the Mass Shadow Generator. From his ship, safely out of range, Revan watched. The plan had worked out perfectly up till this point. The weapon activated and everything changed. The gravity field created by the generator tore through space, dragging thousands of ships, Republic and Mandalorian alike, down to the surface of Malachor. They didn't just crash, they were crushed, shredded, ripped apart. The combatants on the surface of Malachor were crushed. The planet's crust completely fractured from the Force. Malachor 5 became a graveyard, being held together barely by anomalies. Revan heard thousands of voices cry out in fear and anguish, before they all went silent. The Mandalorians were decimated. Whatever was left of their fleet surrendered unconditionally. The war was finally over. Revan's vow to destroy the Mandalorians had been fulfilled, but the cost was beyond any Jedi. Revan had killed millions. Chapter 5: Rise of the Sith. The battle at Malachor 5 marked the end of the Mandalorian Wars. In the weeks following their defeat, Revan ordered their remaining warriors to be stripped of their weapons and armor. He commanded them to dismantle their basilisk war droids, ensuring they couldn't regroup and reignite the war. He also anticipated that the Mandalorians could rally under a new leader if given the chance. Thus, he withheld Mandalore, the Ultimate's mask, from them. Without it, the Mandalorians were left without a symbol of leadership, and many drifted into lives as bounty hunters and mercenaries. Soon after, Revan also completed construction of his personal assassin droid, HK-47, modeled on the Chirka Corporation's HK-24 series. In the greater galaxy, though, the disaster at Malachor couldn't just be ignored. Despite the Republic's victory, the Jedi involved in the war had strayed too far from the Jedi path. The Jedi Council summoned all the Jedi from the Revanchist movement back to face trial for the war crimes they had committed. Meetra Surik, due to the pain she suffered from all the death from the activation of the mass shadow generator, cut herself off from the Force and returned to face the Jedi Council's judgment. She was, however, the only one to return. Revan and Malak, as well as all the other followers, rejected the summons. Instead, they led their remaining forces into the unknown regions, claiming to pursue Mandalorian remnants. Malak had urged Revan to eliminate Surik as she had defied them and returned to the Jedi, but Revan refused, saying she was already dead to the Force and no threat to them. The final words of Mandalore had burned into Revan's mind ever since their last duel, but only now did he have the time to follow up on Mandalore's final clues. Revan and Malak then ventured to the ice planet Rakata. There, hidden in the twin ice formations known as the Twin Spears, they found the tomb of an ancient Sith Lord called Dromund II. Inside, a datachron confirmed Mandalore's story. It mentioned a world called Nthema, pointing toward the real force behind the Mandalorian Wars. Deciding to follow up on this clue and find the culprit behind the Mandalorian Wars, Revan and Malak decided that they had to leave the Republic behind. Before leaving the tomb, Revan hid Mandalore's mask in Dromund's sarcophagus, content that the Mandalorians would never be reclaiming it. The two then journeyed to Nthema. Upon landing and taking their first steps out onto the planet, they felt pain. It was a feeling that they've never felt in this way before. It was a world utterly void of the Force. After gathering their strength on the barren planet, they uncovered the tale of Vitiate, a Sith Lord who, in 4999 BBY, performed a ritual that drained all life from the planet. Vitiate absorbed the power, became immortal, and eventually declared himself Sith Emperor. He gathered a new generation of Sith and left behind the ruins of the old Empire. This revelation shocked both of them. The Sith were thought to have been long extinct. Now they were learning that there was even an immortal Emperor that had secretly built the Sith from the ground up. To make matters worse, this Emperor seemed to be the culprit behind the Mandalorian aggressions. He had to be stopped. Revan and Malak tracked the remnants of Vitiate's Sith to Dromund Kaas. There, they disguised themselves as mercenaries and spent months infiltrating the Sith Empire, uncovering the Emperor's plan to invade the Republic. But as with all practitioners of the dark side which had swayed from the light, their pride and overconfidence led them to believe they could defeat the Emperor alone. With help from the Yari, a seemingly sympathetic Imperial Guard, they attempted to breach the Imperial Citadel. Unbeknownst to them, however, all of the Emperor's guards were bound to his will, and Yari was leading them into a trap. They stormed the throne room and stood before the Emperor. However, Vitiate didn't fight them. Instead, without even standing up, he overwhelmed their minds, enslaving them to his will and remolding them into Sith under his command. With that, the Emperor sent them back to the Republic to weaken it from within, tasking them with locating the Rakatan Star Forge. Under his influence, the two friends started their search for the Star Forge. Having already discovered the star maps on Dantooine and Kashyyyk during the Mandalorian Wars, they were able to derive the last 3 star maps to Manaan, Tatooine, and Korriban. On Korriban, Revan desecrated the tomb of Tuluk Hord and retrieved several relics for himself, including Tuluk Hord's battle mask. In the tomb of Naga Sadow, they found the last star map, on Korriban. By 3959 BBY, with all the star maps decoded, they located the Star Forge in the Lihan system. But upon arrival, their ship crashed and they were captured by the native primitive Black Rakatan. After a tussle with the Rakata, Revan struck a deal with them to retrieve an ancient tome from the rival Elder Rakata tribe. However, after talking to the Elders, he chose to ally with them instead. Revan negotiated access to the Temple of the Ancients, promising to destroy the Star Forge and help free the Rakata from their dark history. Once the temple was opened, Revan broke his word, entered the temple with Malak, disabled the disruptor field protecting Lihan, and accessed the Star Forge. By the time they reached the Star Forge orbiting the star Abo, Revan and Malak had broken free of the Emperor's influence. But their fall was absolute, and they now acted out of their own ambition, wanting to reshape the galaxy. They declared themselves leaders of a new Sith Empire, with Revan as the master and Malak as his apprentice, branding the names Darth Revan and Darth Malak. Using the Republic ships and troops that had followed them into the unknown regions, they built a new Sith military. The Starforge itself was an ancient superweapon, powered by the dark side of the Force, which was able to produce ships, weapons, and other resources at an insanely quick pace. By activating it, they quickly built a fleet strong enough to challenge the Republic. With the Starforge operational, they reclaimed Korriban and re-established the Sith Academy to train future Sith. Revan would come to mold a lot of the Sith's teaching, outlining his views on the relationship between a Sith master and his apprentices. Revan further studied the Forge and discovered that it could create not just machines, but life itself, drawing from the Force or raw matter. Despite using the Starforge extensively to build his army, Revan was well aware of the threats it imposed. The fall of the Rakatan Infinite Empire was due to their heavy resilience on the Starforge, which slowly corrupted and doomed them. Revan hence wanted to avoid repeating the Rakatan's mistakes, and thus limited his own use of the Forge, deciding not to interact too heavily with it himself. Malak saw this as weakness on Revan's part, as he saw far more potential that the Starforge could offer, aside from just ships, but being the apprentice, he couldn't influence his master's orders for now. Within a few cycles, their fleet was ready. The Republic didn't know what was to come. Chapter 6: Jedi Civil War. Revan launched the Jedi Civil War with a strategic strike on the Republic shipyards at Forost, using his knowledge of Republic defenses to seize or destroy most of the fleet there. He soon promoted the defector Saul Karath to Admiral of the Sith forces. The Sith quickly advanced, capturing numerous systems in the Outer Rim. However, the once rather harmonious relationship between Revan and Malak had become more fractured. Ever since becoming Sith, Malak had become more brutal than ever before, and also seek to overpower Revan. A huge fight between the two broke out when Malak ordered Saul to make an orbital bombardment of Telos IV, a world Revan had intended to capture, not destroy. The entire planet was left a destroyed wasteland, marking one of the greatest tragedies in the Jedi Civil War. Although Revan didn't care too much for the lives lost at this point, he rather saw it as a counterproductive to his greater goal. The truth was, he didn't seek to destroy the Republic. Rather, he felt that parts of it needed to be reformed to be better prepared for the threat of the Emperor. The Sith teachings, in his mind, were the superior way to go about it, but still, he needed the Republic to willingly submit at some point. To further his goal of infiltrating the Republic, he orchestrated the assassination of several political figures at the hands of his assassin droid, HK-47. To support his growing empire, Revan partnered with Churka Corporation, granting them economic privileges on the captured worlds in exchange for logistical aid. Revan also prioritized the capture and conversion of Jedi rather than killing them. Those who surrendered were turned into Sith, while those that didn't submit were killed. But as with all Sith relations, tensions between Revan and Malak eventually erupted. Aboard Revan's flagship, Malak accused his master of being weak, leading to a duel that ended with Revan severing Malak's jaw. Malak survived, but needed a metal prosthesis and vocabulator to speak. Revan's assassin droid HK-47 also then started to refer to Malak as a meat bag, a term Revan found so amusing that he programmed the droid to use it for all organic life forms. At the height of the conflict, with the Republic desperate to gain a footing in the war, they devised a plan. They wanted to capture or kill Revan, the orchestrator of the entire war. In 3957 BBY, the Jedi Council lured Revan into a trap using a fleet as bait in the Outer Rim. Revan took the bait, and a Jedi strike team led by Bastila Shan boarded his flagship. As Revan was about to face the intruders, Malak, seeing the opportunity to get rid of his master once and for all and claim all the power for himself, fired on Revan's ship from his own, hoping to kill his master and the Jedi aboard. On the bridge of Revan's ship, Bastila had just struck Revan with a force push just before the blast hit. Severely injured and unconscious, Bastila took the unconscious Revan with her. Killing him in that condition would have gone against the Jedi way, and she wondered if perhaps capturing him could help the Republic find out more about the origin of this mysterious fleet. Thus, she sustained his dying body with the Force to keep him alive. This act formed a deep Force bond with him. She proceeded to bring him to the Jedi Council on Dantooine. The Council, at first unsure what to do with Revan, decided that it was best to erase all his memories and give him a new identity as a Republic soldier from Duralia. Bastila secretly kept Revan's mask and hid it away for now. Meanwhile, Malak had declared himself the new Dark Lord of the Sith. With Revan gone, he took full control of the Sith Empire and pressed his assault against the Republic, keeping them constantly on the defensive. The war was far from over, and the Republic was in a dire state. Chapter 7: A Soldier of the Republic. To uncover the origins of Revan's mysterious fleet and determine how to defeat Darth Malak, the Jedi Council decided to take a risk. They placed their hope in the unique Force bond between Revan and Bastila Shan, believing it could help recover fragments of Revan's lost memories if they were to spend enough time together. To protect this process, Bastila was ordered to keep Revan's true identity a secret, fearing that he could reclaim his old identity as a Sith Lord. She was placed in command of the hammerhead cruiser Endar Spire, and Revan, stripped of his past and memories, was given a false identity and enlisted in the Republic military as an ordinary soldier. Malak continued to push the Republic back. However, there was one Jedi he feared, the same Jedi that had boarded Revan's ship. It was Bastila Shan. She had a unique ability called Battle Meditation, a rare Force ability that allowed her to single-handedly change the outcome of a battle by influencing the troop morale and tactics. Thus, Malak hunted her and wanted her dead. In 3956 BBY, Malak located the Endar Spire in orbit above the planet Taurus and launched a surprise attack. Revan was jarred awake in his quarters to the sound of explosions. His bunkmate, Trask Olgo, burst into the room, urging him to suit up. Once armed and ready, Revan followed Trask out into the chaos of the ship, both of them under orders to locate and protect Bastila Shan. As they navigated the corridors of the crumbling vessel, they encountered groups of Sith troopers boarding the ship. Together, Revan and Trask engaged the enemy, cutting a path through the assault teams. Pressing onward, they reached the ship's bridge, only to discover that Bastila had already evacuated. The only option left was to reach the escape pods. Near the escape pod bay, the two encountered a sealed door. Behind it stood Darth Bandon, Malak's new apprentice. Realizing they couldn't both get away, Trask made a split-second decision. He charged the Sith head-on, locking the door behind him and yelling for Revan to run, sacrificing himself. Alone now, Revan was contacted by Captain Karth Onasi, one of the Republic's top pilots and war hero. Karth had managed to survive the attack and was tracking Revan's position through the ship's systems. He warned that Bastila had already launched in an escape pod and that Revan was the last crew member still aboard. Following Karth's instructions, Revan battled his way through the last pockets of resistance and reached the final escape pod. Him and Karth launched it just moments before the Endar Spire exploded in orbit. However, their pod was damaged during their escape and crash-landed in the upper city of Taurus. The impact knocked Revan unconscious, and Karth dragged him to safety into an abandoned apartment in the South Apartments district. As Revan lay unconscious, he was haunted by a cryptic vision. He saw Bastila locked in combat with Revan aboard a starship bridge. It was a fragment of something deeper, something from his past that refused to stay buried. But as his memory was wiped, he had no idea what the vision meant, and that the masked figure whom Bastila was fighting was himself. Awaking from his sleep, he told Karth that they had to try to find Bastila. Taris, now under Sith lockdown, was being scoured by Darth Malak's forces in search of Bastila. Revan and Karth had to find her before the Sith did. Taris was a layered city, separated into a wealthy upper city and a poverty and crime-riddled lower city. Their search led them into the lower city and into the territory of two rival swoop gangs, the Black Vulkars and the Hidden Becks. There, they found out that Bastila had been captured by the Black Vulkar gang and was going to be the prize for the winner of the annual swoop race. The Becks offered Revan to be their racer, however to do that he had to recover a prototype accelerator from the Black Vulkar base. To get into the base, he would need the help of a young Twi'lek called Mission Veo. Revan agreed, found Mission in the lower levels, and helped her rescue her Wookiee companion Zalbar, who had been captured by Gamorrean slavers. Having saved Zalbar's life, he pledged a life debt to Revan, tying his fate to Revan's own. Together, the four infiltrated the Black Vulkar base, got the accelerator, and Revan went on to win the swoop race. However, the Black Vulkar accused Revan of cheating and tried to backpedal on releasing Bastila, but Bastila managed to free herself from her cage, and together they fended off the thugs. After encountering Bastila, Revan got a vision from his past again, this time from the battle on the bridge moments before he was captured by her. United, the team tried to devise a plan to escape the Sith blockade around the planet. Enter Canderous Ordo, a Mandalorian mercenary who seeks to get off the planet himself. He offered that they'd steal the Ebon Hawk, one of the fastest ships in the sector. It belonged to the local crime lord Davik Kang. However, they'd still need the Sith access codes to bypass the blockade. Revan thus devised a plan to infiltrate the Sith base on Taris. First thing, they bought an advanced astromech droid called T3M4 to help them infiltrate the Sith base, as only T3 was advanced enough to bypass the base's security. After getting the codes, the group and Canderous infiltrated Davik's estate, fought off guards and Davik himself trying to stop them before escaping Taris on the Ebon Hawk. This was also just in time, as Malak had grown impatient and decided to reenact the Telos 4 bombardment on Taris, leveling the city to kill Bastila. Taris was left in ruins, but the Ebon Hawk and its crew survived. Chapter 8. Search for the Star Forge. Having escaped Taris, the squad, consisting of Revan, Bastila, Mission, Zalbar, Canderous, and T3, flew to the Jedi Academy on Dantooine. There, Bastila convinced the Jedi Council to retrain Revan in the ways of the Force, despite their lingering fears. Revan advanced quickly, and during his training had another vision of the past. What made it more special was that Bastila had exactly the same vision as himself. He saw himself and Malak investigating one of the ruins on Dantooine. After revealing his vision to the Council, they tasked him with locating the ruins in the vision and reinforced the idea of Bastila's Force bond with him. They told him that Bastila and his destiny were bonded through the Force, hence they shared the same visions. The bond also meant that they could catch glimpses into each other's minds to a degree, and also allowed them to feel what the other felt. After leaving the council chambers, Revan confronted Bastila about their bond and their connection through it, hinting that she'd been stealing glances at him in a flirty way. Ever since helping rescue her off Taris, Revan felt a bond to her. Bastila responded rather dismissively, saying that their Force bond was unique in the sense that she hadn't been this close to someone before in an emotional fashion, but that this bond was their destiny and nothing more in the end. With that, they left the conversion for now, as Bastila didn't feel like disclosing any more of her feelings toward Revan, claiming that doing so would leave both of them down the path of the dark side. Revan, amused by her uncomfort regarding the situation, left it be. At the ruins, they found the first star map, which revealed the location of the other star maps scattered across the galaxy. The Jedi Council thus tasked Revan and his crew with the search for the maps. A new member of Revan's team was Juhani, a Cathar Jedi whom Revan had helped turn back from the dark side of the Force, and thus was thankful to join him on his quest. Revan had fully embraced the Jedi teaching once again, and preached them to everyone around him whenever possible, sensing the good in people. The Ebon Hawk set out with the first stop being Tatooine. Shortly before landing, him and Bastila had yet another vision of the star map's location in a cave. They landed the ship in Anchorhead and went out into the city. After talking to some locals, they figured that they'd need to venture out into the desert where the Tusken Raiders lived. They also figured out that Mission Vale's brother got captured by the Raiders, thus they had to try and free him. To communicate with the Tuskens, they bought a droid at a local shop who turned out to be none other than HK-47, Revan's old assassin droid, who was also well versed in several languages. However, Revan at this point had no memories of this old droid whatsoever, and also HK had his parts of his memory banks locked away. Together, they ventured out into the desert to find the Sand People. Upon arriving at the village, he negotiated with the Chief Tan to bring a Krayt Dragon Pearl in exchange for the prisoners, including Mission's brother. At the Krayt Dragon's cave, the group set a trap by luring the beast out with bait. Once the creature emerged, they triggered pre-planted explosives, killing it in a powerful blast. Inside the cave, they discovered the second star map and realized the Krayt Dragon had grown to its massive size due to the dark energy radiating from the star map's corruption. With the Dragon's Pearl, they freed the prisoners from the Tuskens and left the planet for the next location. Next up was Kashyyyk, where Zalbar revealed why he had been exiled. 20 years earlier, Zalbar had discovered that his brother Chundar was secretly aiding the Churka slavers to exploit Kashyyyk. In a fit of rage, Zalbar unsheathed his claws and attacked Chundar, an act so dishonorable in Wookiee society that it saw him branded a Mad Claw and cast out by their father. Eventually they arrived at the Wookiee village, where Chundar, who was now chieftain, took Zalbar hostage and demanded Revan eliminate a Mad Claw in the Shadowlands. Revan reluctantly agreed, realizing he had little choice but to play along to help Zalbar. Revan's party descended down into the Shadowlands. There they encountered a Jedi named Jolee Bindo and helped him fight off some poachers. Jolee, in turn, joined their cause and helped them locate the next star map while fighting through the various dangers in the Shadowlands. They also encountered Freyr, Zalbar's father, who turned out to be the Mad Claw they should be killing. Freyr revealed that he had been ambushed by his own son Chundar and left for dead. Together, Revan and Freyr set out to retrieve Baka's sword, the symbol of legitimate leadership among Wookiees. After battling and killing a Terran Tadic that had the blade stuck inside it, they recovered and prepared for a final confrontation. Returning to the village, Revan and his allies stormed the chieftain's hall. Chundar refused to yield. A fight erupted, and Chundar and his Chekra Corporation allies were killed. With justice restored, Freyr reclaimed his title, thanked Revan, and offered his son a place by his side. But Zalbar, loyal to the life debt he had sworn to Revan, chose to continue the journey. On Manaan, Revan found himself in a rather tense standoff between the Republic and the Sith Empire, both of which relied on the aquatic world's monopoly on Kolto, a rare healing agent found only in its oceans. To preserve access to this vital resource, both sides were forced to maintain an uneasy peace within the floating city of Ahto, under the strict laws of the native Selkath who wanted to remain neutral in the conflict. During his time there, Revan went on to uncover a Sith plot to manipulate the local youth and corrupt them to the dark side in order to slowly take control of the Kolto supply. He exposed the conspiracy to the local government, leading them to put heavy sanctions on the Sith. He eventually discovered the star map in the ocean, as it had recently been uncovered by the Selkath, and that it had corrupted one of the Firaxa sharks to grow to an enormous size. Despite this, Revan was able to access the star map and left with the gang for the final planet. They had grown rather fondly of each other, and were almost like a family. As the Ebon Hawk was en route to Korriban, something went wrong. A powerful force pulled the ship out of hyperspace. An Interdictor-class ship had intercepted them, and it was none other than the Leviathan, the personal flagship of Admiral Saul Karath. The same man who had betrayed the Republic, bombarded Telos 4, and also left Karth's life in ruins, as Karth was from Telos 4. The Ebon Hawk got boarded and all of them were captured. Karth, Revan, and Bastila were brought before Saul, who tortured them and also revealed that the Sith had all but wiped out the Jedi Academy on Dantooine. Before torturing them to unconsciousness, he smugly informed them that Darth Malak was on his way to meet them in person. Meanwhile, Canderous, who had slipped out before being captured, managed to free the trio. Focused on escaping before Malak's arrival, they split up once again. Revan, Bastila, and Karth were to disable the tractor beam, while the rest of the crew would secure the Ebon Hawk. Fighting their way through squads of Sith troops and Dark Jedi, the trio pushed deeper into the Leviathan to get to the control bridge to deactivate the tractor beam. On the bridge, they killed Admiral Karath after a battle. As Karath lay dying, Karth stood over him, consumed by rage. Revan urged him not to give in to hatred, not to fall like so many others. With his last breath, Karath turned to Karth and whispered the truth. Revan, the man he'd fought beside, the leader of their mission, was the former Dark Lord himself. Stunned by the revelation, Karth turned to Bastila, demanding answers. Bastila confirmed it, but wanted to discuss it on the bridge. Revan, meanwhile, was more confused by the revelation than anyone else, and didn't really grasp what his companions were talking about. Nevertheless, they hurried to get back to the Ebon Hawk, but it was too late. On the way back, they ran across Darth Malak. Malak was amused to have a reunion with his former master in this way, especially with the latter not remembering a single thing of their shared past. Malak went on to reveal Revan's true identity once and for all, that he was not just some soldier who had become a Jedi, but the very Sith Lord the Jedi feared most. The Revan who brought the Sith back from extinction. The Revan who once commanded the Starforge, whose name alone still made worlds tremble. In disbelief, Revan turned to Bastila. She quickly defended the actions of the Jedi Council, explaining that it was their only way of potentially beating the Sith. She also said that the bond they shared was created as she healed the wounded Revan after Malak's ship opened fire. Revan couldn't quite believe what was being revealed to him. He felt betrayed, as the person closest to him had been lying to him all this time. Bastila then added that she had done all this in order to help him and try to redeem him. That was the reason she decided to save the gravely wounded Revan back then. She felt that he could make up for the sins he committed during his previous life. Weighing her arguments, Revan decided to forgive Bastila for lying to him all this time. That was the path of the Jedi. Malak just laughed. His former master had become weak, corrupted by the Jedi. He told Revan he had always regretted not facing him himself to take the mantle of Dark Lord, but was happy that fate had granted him a second chance to finally make up for it. Malak then attacked, using the Force to freeze Bastila and Karth in place, but Revan held his ground momentarily. After a short duel, Malak managed to immobilize Revan as well. Just before he could land the final blow, Bastila, who managed to break free from the Force freeze, intervened. She engaged Malak and sealed the blast door behind him, shouting at Revan and Karth to make a run for it. Seeing little other options, the two made their way to the Ebon Hawk, leaving Bastila behind, and escaped. She had sacrificed herself for them. Revan was distraught at the thought of leaving her behind. In the quiet afterward, gathered in the Ebon Hawk's main cabin, the rest of the crew learned the truth about Revan's identity. Mission Vale was stunned, but unshaken. She looked at Revan not as the Sith Lord he was, but as the friend who had saved her and Zalbar. The Wookiee grunted his agreement, reaffirming his life debt. Jolee Bindo admitted he had known all along, and had seen that he had changed. Canderous was almost excited upon learning of it, and pledged to follow Revan, the greatest warrior of his time, into any fire. HK-47 also revealed that his behavioral matrix had identified Revan as his original master, and that now he had access to all his memories, happy to keep working together. The rest of the crew also said similar things, having gone through so many adventures and seen how Revan had helped people selflessly during his trips to find the star maps. Hearing all their confessions, Karth too finally came to peace with it. After all the betrayal and doubt, he chose to trust the man Revan had become, not the one he had been. With this knowledge in mind, the crew departed for their final destination in search of the star maps. Korriban was a planet steeped in Revan's past, being the founder of the now thriving academy there, where several acolytes were trained in the ways of the Sith. Posing as a prospective Sith and claiming his companions were his slaves, Revan was granted entry into the academy. There, he was told that in order to rise through the ranks of the Sith, he would have to earn prestige, as only 1 in 5 acolytes would get to become one. The final test would be in the tomb of Naga Sadow, which was discovered and unearthed by Revan and Malak years ago. Revan completed several challenges and was eventually admitted to the final test. In Naga Sadow's tomb, he found the last star map, and thus had all the pieces necessary to find the location of the Starforge, while also resisting the temptation of the dark side that once consumed him. After battling his way to the Ebon Hawk through some Sith acolytes, the gang was on the way to their final destination, the location that the star maps had uncovered. Chapter 9. Rakata Prime. When Revan and his companions finally reached the location given by the star maps and came out of hyperspace, their ship was immediately under duress. The first thing they saw was a huge space station that seemed to be drawing energy from a nearby star. It was the Starforge. Before they could glance at it anymore though, Sith fighters attacked the Ebon Hawk. When trying to flee from them, they got caught in a disruptor field and crash-landed on the nearby planet's surface. The ship's stabilizers were fried, leaving the Hawk grounded until replacement parts could be salvaged. Revan and his companions went from board to scout the area for parts and investigate the source of the disruptor field. Eventually they encountered the Elder Rakatan tribe, who explained their long history, including Revan's past betrayal, when he and Malak had once promised to destroy the Starforge but did not. Revan, despite knowing his identity now, still had no memory of his past actions. He sought to redeem himself and asked for their trust once again. They agreed to help him, but only if he proved himself worthy. Revan was tasked with rescuing a scout who had been captured by the Black Rakata. Revan did as told and led his party into the stronghold of the Black Rakata, battling through waves of hostile natives and defeating the tribe's leader and freeing the Elder Scout in the process. Returning to the Elder settlement, Revan was told the ritual to deactivate the Temple of the Ancients' defenses would proceed, but due to his past transgression of entering the temple with Malak years ago, he would have to enter alone. Revan agreed, but Jolee and Juhani insisted to join him, as they had foreseen that Revan would need help in the temple. Reluctantly, the Elder let them join as well. The trio entered the temple after the ritual concluded. They made their way to the summit of the temple to deactivate the disruptor field, where a well-known figure was awaiting them. It was Bastila Shan, now corrupted by the dark side and Malak's new apprentice. Wielding a red lightsaber, she challenged Revan, mocking his fall from power. He once had everything as the Dark Lord, and now he was just a mere Jedi preaching selflessness and forgiveness. Revan was distraught at seeing Bastila in this state. Through their bond, he had felt that Malak had tortured her endlessly until she gave in. Eventually, she agreed with Malak's stance and decided to turn to the Sith side. Revan tried to remind her of the bond they shared and all the hardship they've been through from Terrace up until now, but Bastila didn't care. A duel ensued in which Revan and his companions bested Bastila. Bastila expected Revan to kill her, but once again, he tried to call her to return to the light side and reminded her of their Force bond. Bastila, though, dismissed their bond, claiming that Revan had to draw on the dark side himself in order to beat her. Revan denied, but Bastila didn't want to hear that. She quickly escaped to a nearby ship and escaped on it. Frustrated that he couldn't help Bastila, Revan went on to deactivate the disruptor field and made their way back to the Ebon Hawk. Their final mission was awaiting. Chapter 10: The Battle for the Starforge. Returning to the Ebon Hawk, Juhani, Jolee, and Revan were greeted by the rest of their companions on the beach. The others were dismayed upon hearing of Bastila Shan's fall to the dark side. However, Jolee urged Revan to remember their connection, both through the Force and their shared feelings, insisting that the bond they shared could still reach her, despite the corrupting influence of the dark side. The crew, resolute in their mission, expressed their full support for Revan's next step. With the team united, the Ebon Hawk lifted off from the planet's surface and set course for the Starforge. As the ship neared the massive space station, Carth received a transmission from Republic Admiral Dodonna. The Republic fleet had arrived and had engaged the Sith fleet around the Starforge. He reported that Bastila had been coordinating the Sith fleet through her battle meditation, making it rather difficult for them to break through in any way. Carth urged that the Starforge had to be destroyed at all costs. In response, Dodonna and Jedi Master Vandar dispatched a team of Jedi Knights to board the Starforge alongside Revan. With the fleet engaged in battle, the Hawk pressed forward and managed to dock in one of the Starforge's hangars. Upon entering the station, Revan and the crew of the Ebon Hawk disembarked to locate Shan. They were met by a group of Jedi Knights who had been sent to aid in the mission. However, the group was quickly ambushed by a squad of Dark Jedi. Following a fierce confrontation, the Jedi reinforcements remained behind to defend the Ebon Hawk, while Revan and his companions pressed deeper into the facility. There, they were confronted by waves of battle droids manufactured by the Starforge. Fighting through the droids, the group continued onward, wandering deeper into the Starforge. Eventually, they reached the command center where Bastila was directing the Sith fleet. Upon their arrival, Shan immobilized Revan's companions and sealed the chamber, trapping Revan inside with her. With no hesitation, she attacked, but Revan bested her in combat yet again. In disbelief, broken and exhausted, Bastila collapsed. Her entire path down the dark side was in order to gain more power for herself by rejecting the Jedi teaching and thus becoming stronger. Yet Revan, who at this point was fully in the light, could beat her repeatedly. She pleaded with Revan to kill her as there was no redemption left for her. Everything she had once stood for as a Jedi was lost. Revan, however, refused. Reaching out to her not just through the Force, but through the love they shared, he reminded her that redemption was possible, even for those who had fallen as far as she had. After all, he had once walked the same path as her. He revealed his love for her openly, and through their powerful connection, Bastila felt the truth of his words. In that moment, her hatred and despair crumbled. She admitted that she loved him too, and that she had suppressed her feelings for him despite the bond they shared. She confessed it was an agonizing feeling to keep the truth about his identity from him all the time. With that, she pulled herself back to the light side of the Force. Though redeemed, Bastila feared that facing Malak could tempt her back into darkness. Instead, she chose to remain behind at the command center to support the Republic fleet with her battle meditation, ensuring they would have the advantage. Revan, now alone, pressed forward to confront Malak one last time. At the summit, Malak greeted his former master. He recognized that Revan had surpassed his former self and had become even more powerful than ever before. No matter what the Starforge and himself had thrown at him, Revan had prevailed. With contempt, Malak found that Revan would have made a great apprentice perhaps, but was also too powerful. Ultimately, he dismissed the idea, realizing that it was fate that Revan had survived up until this point, and that only in a final duel between the two of them could they finally end it. With that said, Malak engaged Revan. The fight was intense, but Revan managed to force Malak onto the defensive. Seeking to regain the upper hand, Malak retreated and revealed his trump card, the power of the Starforge itself. Using the station, Malak drew life energy from the bodies of Jedi he had captured at Dantooine, siphoning their force power to replenish his own. He mocked Revan that all these years ago that he had seen the full potential of the Starforge where Revan merely saw a factory. Revan didn't really remember it though and just re-engaged Malak. Despite this enormous advantage on Malak's end, Revan persisted in their duel. He kept fending Malak off while also destroying the capsules with the Jedi bodies to stop Malak from replenishing his energy. As the Republic and Sith fleets waged war beyond the walls of the station, Revan and Malak's duel raged across the viewing platform. In a final stroke from Revan, he hit Malak with his lightsaber and mortally wounded him. Malak collapsed to his knees. Gasping for breath, he looked up at Revan and wondered aloud how his fate might have changed if the Jedi had captured him instead of Revan. Revan knelt beside him, expressing sorrow for the path Malak had chosen, but reminding him that his choices, however influenced, had always been his own. Malak nodded in agreement. With his last breath, he told Revan that perhaps it had never been his fate to rule the galaxy, that this fate had always been reserved for Revan, and now at the end of his reign, as he feels the darkness consuming him, he would be left with nothing. With that, Malak died. Revan stood victorious. His former friend had been beaten. A sense of sadness overcame Revan. Although he didn't remember their time together, something deep inside him awoke after seeing Malak's lifeless body on the floor. With these thoughts, he extinguished his lightsaber and made his way back to the Ebon Hawk. There, he was met by Bastila and Karth. They congratulated him on defeating Malak, but warned that the Republic fleet was preparing to destroy the Starforge. Acting quickly, the crew escaped aboard the Ebon Hawk as the station was consumed by fire. Indeed, the Republic forces, with the help of Bastila's battle meditation, had been able to overwhelm the defending Sith fleet. Several Hammerhead cruisers had surrounded the Starforge and were opening fire at it. The forge collapsed, breaking under the laser fire before finally exploding into dozens of pieces. The battle over the Starforge had been won by the Republic. With the battle won, the Ebon Hawk returned to Lahan, flanked by Republic fighters serving as an honor guard. On the planet's surface, the crew went to the Temple of the Ancients, where they were greeted by Admiral Dodonna, Master Vandar, and a crowd of Republic soldiers. Dodonna commended the group for their bravery and sacrifice, presenting Revan with the Cross of Glory, the Republic's highest military honor. Master Vandar stepped forward to officially recognize Revan's redemption, declaring him a Jedi Knight once more and honoring him with the title of the Jedi's Prodigal Knight. As Republic starfighters performed ceremonial flyovers above the temple, Revan stood on its steps alongside his companions, all of them having survived their great journey together. The Jedi Civil War had come to an end. With Malak defeated and the Starforge destroyed, the remaining Sith forces could be dealt with by the Republic forces and their Jedi. The crowd cheered, and Vandar reminded him that though the battle was over, the galaxy would continue to need the strength and wisdom of the Jedi. Chapter 11. Aftermath. Shortly after the Battle of Rakata Prime, Revan personally returned to Korriban with the Republic forces and drove the remaining Sith forces from the ancient Tomb World. Though the Sith Empire he had once built had collapsed, remnants still lingered, and Revan personally ensured their removal from the heart of the Sith history. In the weeks that followed, the Jedi Council approached him with an offer to fully retrain him in the Jedi ways under the guidance of a new master. Revan declined. His understanding of the Force, both light and dark, had grown beyond the instruction of any Jedi learner, and he saw no need to relearn what he had lived through. Bastila was offered the same opportunity, and she too refused. The Council's growing discomfort with the pair only worsened when Revan and Bastila announced their intent to marry. On the night of their wedding, Revan drank heavily in celebration, resulting in a hangover that lasted several days. Their shared bond had helped them both come back from the edge of darkness. They viewed their love as a source of strength, not weakness. Proof that positive emotion could fortify one's connection to the Force rather than disrupt it. Revan, believing this perspective could help others, approached the Council with an offer to share his insights. That passion, love, and emotional connection could serve the Jedi rather than endanger them. The Council's reaction, however, was stifled. They refused Revan's words, and several members called for his banishment from the Order entirely for spreading these thoughts. However, Revan's status as a war hero complicated the matter. His influence and public image were too significant for the Council to risk an outright expulsion. Thus, they settled on a compromise. Revan and Bastila would be permitted to remain within the Order and keep their marital status, but Revan was forbidden from spreading his philosophies to others. Bastila was furious at the Council's decision, but Revan urged her to let the matter rest. It was not a war worth fighting, he argued. The couple soon moved into an apartment on Coruscant, seeking a quiet and peaceful private life. Revan eventually was granted the rank of Jedi Master, though his relationship with the Order remained strained. After beating Malak on the Starforge, bits and pieces of his old memories kept resurfacing, but they were still unclear to him mostly. One of them was of Meetra Surik, his former general in the Mandalorian Wars. He made several attempts to reach out through the Force to her, but to no avail, as he couldn't sense her presence anywhere in the galaxy. The absence left him uneasy, seeking a quieter life. Revan shaved his beard, abandoned his Jedi robes in public, and lived largely in anonymity. Only T3M4 and HK-47 remained regular companions in the apartment. All seemed well in his small world. But the peace was short-lived. In 3954 BBY, 2 years after Malak's defeat, Revan began to suffer from vivid nightmares. The dreams were of a storm-covered, unfamiliar world with dark skies. A growing presence of darkness loomed in each vision, and Revan awoke night after night with a sense of dread. After the third night in a row, he rose quietly, washed his face in the refresher, and stepped out onto the apartment balcony to gather his thoughts. He tried not to wake Bastila, but she sensed his mind in disarray and joined him. Together they stood in silence before discussing the strange dreams that had begun to haunt him. The following morning, Revan contacted Canderous Ordo and arranged a meeting. At the Dealer's Den Cantina, he found Ordo enjoying a private dance. Seated together, Revan asked about the Mandalorian Wars, as he had done many times before, and shared the details of his recurring visions. He believed the dreams were tied to the Mandalorian conflict, perhaps even to the events that had led him and Malak down the path to darkness. Revan expressed doubt about Mandalore the Ultimate's motives for starting the war, suspecting they were influenced by the same shadow he now sensed. He asked Ordo to reach out to other Mandalorians and gather any information that might shed light on Mandalore's true reasons. Though reluctant at first, Ordo agreed. The two parted ways with a plan in motion. Still troubled by the dreams and unable to locate Meetra through the Force, Revan decided to visit the Jedi Temple. Disguised in his hooded robes to avoid the stares of young Jedi who idolized him, or the scorn of elder Jedi who still distrusted him, Revan entered the archives. There, he searched the records for any mention of Surik. He found a report on the Battle of Malachor V, but its contents were familiar. Both he and Surik had known what the Mass Shadow Generator would do, and had still ordered its activation. From the author of the report, he learned that Surik had severed her connection to the Force and exiled herself. Less than a month later, Canderous contacted Revan and requested another meeting at the Dealer's Den. By that point, Revan's nightmares had decreased in frequency. He arrived at the cantina where Canderous revealed that while he had found no information on the Storm World, he had uncovered something else. Ordo explained that several Mandalorian clans were gathering on the planet Rekiad, where they were searching for Mandalore the Ultimate's lost mask. Upon hearing this, Revan experienced a sudden flash of memory that confirmed the Canderous' theory. He agreed to Ordo's terms and suggested they be there when the clans eventually uncovered the mask. Ordo floated the idea of reuniting their old companions, but Revan dismissed it. Jolee Bindo and Juhani were still part of the Jedi Order. Mission Veo and Zalbar were busy with their own ventures, and HK-47, though loyal, remained far too unstable for such a mission. Returning to his apartment, Revan found Bastila watching holovids in the living room. Before he could speak, she told him she had something to share. Just as he was about to say the same, she revealed that she was pregnant. Revan was stunned. He realized, to his amazement, that he had failed to sense the child's presence within her through the Force. Yet even with this revelation, he felt the need to check out Rekiad. Revan told Bastila he had to go. Angered by his willingness to put the galaxy before his own happiness, Bastila challenged his decision. But Revan convinced her that he was doing it for their child, for the safety of the future. He wanted their child to grow up in peace, not having to suffer through war as the two of them had. She asked to accompany him, but he refused. He couldn't risk her safety and that of the unborn child. Knowing that she couldn't convince Revan to stay, she succumbed to his wish. They spent one final night together in the apartment. The next day, Bastila joined Revan in T3-M4 to the spaceport. Before boarding, Revan embraced his wife and received one last kiss. Then he stepped onto the ship and departed with T3 and Canderous, leaving behind the life he had built to confront the darkness that haunted his dreams. Chapter 12. Reclaiming Mandalore's Mask. As the Ebon Hawk arrived on the frozen world of Rekiad, they crash-landed onto the planet due to damage to one of the landing gears. While T3 stayed behind to make repairs, Revan and Canderous trekked through the snow to the camp, where they were welcomed, though warily, by the Mandalorians of Clan Ordo, including Canderous' wife and clan leader, Vila. As the Mandalorians saw any Jedi as an enemy, Canderous had Revan introduced as a fellow mercenary of his to keep his identity hidden, especially considering he was Revan, the literal reason that the Mandalorians had lost the war. During the night, Revan had yet another dream. He saw himself and Malak standing atop two towering ice pillars, the twin spears, which were somewhere on Rekiad. The dreams were more fragments of his long-lost memories. Realizing they were in the wrong location and that the ice pillars were a hint to find Mandalore's mask, Revan convinced the clan to move the camp. Vila had some objections due to another rival Mandalorian clan already having taken camp up in that territory, but Revan managed to convince him to make the trip nonetheless. On the way to the Twin Spears, they were attacked by the rival clan, but alongside Revan, who had used his lightsaber to fend them off, Clan Ordo managed to fend them off. Canderous told Revan to put the lightsaber away, however, Vila had clearly seen it, but for now she seemed to not take notice of it and instead just remarked that Revan should help the injured. But he could sense her fury beneath the calm demeanor. They passed yet another night in celebration, and the next day, Revan, Canderous, Vila, and 5 other Mandalorians went on to climb up to the Twin Spears. During the climb, Revan had a lot of memories pouring back in about the Mandalorian Wars and how he and Malak had come here. Upon arriving at Dromund II's tomb, Revan retrieved Mandalore's mask as well as a datachron. Turning around, he found himself having 6 guns pointed at him. Vila revealed that she was well aware that he was a Jedi, but not only a Jedi, but that he was Revan, the biggest enemy of the Mandalorians. She pleaded with Canderous to take her side and help her kill Revan, but Canderous refused. In the ensuing chaos, Canderous shot Vila through the heart, ending her life. Revan quickly dispatched the other Mandalorians. Consoling a grieving Canderous, they buried the bodies and decided to sleep in Dramut's tomb for the night. During the night, Revan's memories of the Mandalorian Wars were fully returned and clear. He explained to Canderous that the Sith had manipulated the Mandalorian Wars, and that their next clue lay on the dead world of Nathema. Revan asked Canderous to don the mask and become Mandalore the Preserver, leading the clans to a new purpose, defending the Republic. Canderous agreed. They parted ways, with Canderous getting back to Clan Ordo, while Revan returned to the Ebon Hawk. Together with T3, he departed for Nathema. Chapter 13. Dromund Kaas. As the Ebon Hawk dropped out of hyperspace into the Nathema system, Revan was immediately overwhelmed by a torrent of returning memories. Pain surged through his skull. It felt like his mind was imploding under the pressure of all the memories returning. Once the pain cleared, his memories were very clear. And with that, Revan knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that he had been to Nathema before. Before he could collect more of his thoughts though, T3's frantic beeps pulled Revan's attention back to the cockpit display. The astromech was warning him of another ship in the system that was closing in. Before he could react, a sharp burst of static cracked through the console as they were hit by an ion blast. Systems went dark as power failed across the ship, and gravity took hold. The powerless freighter spiraled downward toward Nathema's surface, caught in the pull of its gravity well. Despite Revan's best efforts, the Hawk crashed through the roof of one of the abandoned buildings on Nathema. The impact knocked Revan unconscious. The attacking vessel belonged to two Sith Lords, Darth Nihris, a member of the Sith Empire's Dark Council, and Lord Scourge, a Sith enforcer under her command. Both had been watching Revan's approach. Upon landing, Nihris told Scourge to investigate the wreck. Scourge did as told, and brought Revan back to their ship. Nihris immediately recognized the Jedi's identity as he had been to Dromund Kaas years ago. She ordered that Revan be brought with them back to Dromund Kaas as she saw him as a potential asset. Nihris and Scourge were part of a growing conspiracy against the Sith Emperor, and she believed that studying how Revan had resisted the Emperor's prior influence might provide a path to disrupt the Emperor's mental domination over his Dark Council and servants. They imprisoned Revan in the dungeons beneath Nihris' estate in Kaas City. He was restrained, isolated, and drugged to sever his connection to the Force. When he awoke, he found himself shackled. Nihris and Scourge entered his cell, wanting answers to their questions on the Republic and the Emperor's mind control. But Revan refused any answers. The Sith went on to torture him for hours with an interrogation droid, but Revan withstood the agony. Scourge soon concluded that Revan would never break, as several of their torture rounds had proven futile. Nihris began to lose interest in their prisoner after the first few weeks, but Scourge did not. The Sith Lord found himself increasingly fascinated by Revan's strength and resilience. In time, the interrogation sessions became something else, conversations and small exchanges between the two, with Scourge being fascinated by Revan's philosophical views. A few months turned into 3 years. During that time, Revan remained a prisoner, confined to a barren cell with a bed, a sink, and a refresher. His body grew lean, and though he developed a minor resistance to the Force suppressants, his access to the Force remained severely limited. In the early months, he had held out hope for rescue, be it by Canderous, Bastilla, or even by T3M4. But hope faded. In its place, clarity emerged as he sought his own way out. He slowly began to feed Scourge fragments of knowledge, baiting him with Jedi philosophy in return for insights into the Sith Empire. It was through these exchanges that Revan learned of the Emperor's intentions to invade the Republic. He also learned Nihris' name, and that she and Scourge opposed the Emperor's ambition. In one of the many sessions with Scourge where they discussed the stagnant state of Nihris' conspiracy against the Emperor, Revan attempted to subtly suggest that he might be an ally in Scourge's cause. But Revan made the implication too obvious. Scourge saw through it and mocked the Jedi, but Revan didn't flinch. He bluffed, claiming that the Force had given him a vision, one that foretold his eventual freedom. Scourge, who had no experience in visions through the Force, couldn't resist and demanded to know more about it. Revan only offered the cryptic reply, "You will understand in time." Intrigued, Scourge left, unsettled. Alone once more, Revan meditated and reached out with what little access to the Force he had. He tried to find Bastilla, but what came to him instead was a vision of Meetra Surik. He saw her face, clear and resolute, and he knew with absolute certainty, Meetra Surik was coming for him. Chapter 14. Return of Meetra Surik. Guided by T3M4, who had repaired the Ebon Hawk and returned to the Republic, Surik had traced Revan's path from Nathema to Dromund Kaas. Disguised as a mercenary, she infiltrated the city, investigating Scourge's identity from the droid's recorded data. She went on to make contact with Scourge, baffling him. Revan's vision had come true. Scourge couldn't believe it. After a short exchange with Surik, Scourge agreed to help her free Revan as he believed they could tip the balance together and topple the Emperor. To do that, he devised a plan. Under the guise that Surik was his new slave, he brought her into the Nihris' fortress. Furthermore, Scourge also informed the Emperor of Nihris' plan to overthrow him in order to divert her attention away from him. The plan worked as the Emperor's Imperial Guard launched an assault on Nihris' estate. As explosions rocked the fortress, Revan initially mistook them for hallucinations, but when the alarms began to blare, he knew Surik was near. Minutes later, Surik arrived. She freed Revan from his cell and embraced her former mentor. Their reunion was short-lived though, as Scourge followed behind. Still reeling from the Force-suppressing drugs, Revan collapsed to his knees. Scourge administered the antidote while Surik handed him his old Mandalorian mask, which had been preserved all this time by Bastila. The moment Revan touched his old mask, the floodgates opened. Every memory he had lost returned. The overload was too much for his mind, and Revan crumpled to the floor. Surprised, Surik and Scourge looked at each other, but before they could act any further, T3M4 alerted them to an approaching presence. Moments later, Darth Nyrus arrived. Scourge and Surik engaged her, but she proved overwhelming. Calling upon a storm of Force lightning, she prepared to finish them both. But just then, Revan had regained his consciousness. Nyrus looked at the Jedi before her, confident that he was no match. She announced to him that she was part of the Dark Council and had conquered numerous worlds. She would be his doom. Revan replied calmly, "I am Revan reborn, and before me, you are nothing." Nyrus unleashed an enormous wave of Force lightning. Revan raised his hands, absorbed the lightning, and hurled it back at her, disintegrating her where she stood. Scourge was amazed at the power of the Jedi they had held captive for all these years. He handed him a lightsaber, and they went on to flee the stronghold together. They fled to a cave where Scourge and Surik had met before in secret. When Scourge went to get supplies, Surik finally had time to catch up with Revan. She requested T3 to project a holo recording. It was Bastila holding their son. The boy, now 3, waved cheerfully at the camera. Shan's message was simple. It was Vaner's birthday, and they both missed him. Revan smiled. The name amused him, being an anagram of his own. When the video ended, he thanked Surik and asked if she would watch it again with him. She agreed. Hours later, Scourge returned. T3 ended the projection as Revan stood to greet him. Scourge reported that the Emperor had eliminated all 12 members of the Dark Council and had declared martial law across Dromund Kaas. Revan, now clear-minded, shared what he had remembered, how he and Malak had been lured into a trap and had their minds broken by him. The trio discussed the Emperor's ritual on Nathema and whether he might attempt it again on Kaas. Although they agreed it would be unlikely, they were also in unison that they had to kill the Emperor as that was their only hope. Preparing themselves for the confrontation that was to come, Surik settled into meditation and Revan continued watching the holo recording. Scourge interrupted Revan then as he wanted to understand the visions of the Force. Revan admitted that his earlier claim had been a bluff, but also confessed that a true vision had come to him soon after. They talked through the night, and Revan acknowledged that it was not his destiny to stop the Emperor. He would accept it. He would die, if that's what the Force required. What mattered was ensuring the future for his son, for the Republic. He had left his family not for glory, but to protect them. Scourge was once again intrigued by the Jedi's selflessness. He couldn't imagine doing the same for anyone. He eventually left Revan alone, and Revan kept watching the recording, over and over again, until the sun began to rise. Chapter 15. Confronting the Emperor. At dawn, Revan, T3M4, Meetra Surik, and Lord Scourge departed the cave and boarded Scourge's land speeder, beginning their journey to Kaas City. As the cold morning air swept across the plains of Dromund Kaas, Revan sat silently in the passenger seat, lost in contemplation. The balance between light and dark, the struggle that had defined his entire life, occupied his thoughts. He had walked both paths, fallen, risen, and now stood between them. He no longer feared either side of the Force. Instead, he embraced the strength of both, and he was stronger for it. They reached the Imperial Citadel and entered it. Inside, Scourge took the lead, demanding an audience with the Emperor. The Imperial Guard escorted them deeper into the Citadel, guiding them through winding corridors until they stood before the great doors to the throne room. There, Captain Yari intercepted them. Yari demanded that Scourge's companions remain behind. As Revan turned to question her, she recognized his mask. She had seen it before, years ago, when she had helped lure Revan and Malak into the Emperor's trap. Her eyes narrowed and her hand moved toward her weapon. Revan moved first. He lashed out with a kick, sending one of the guardsmen stumbling backward. T3M4's blaster erupted to life, filling the hallway with laser fire. Surik and Scourge ignited their lightsabers and leapt into combat. Despite being skilled, Yari was no match for Revan and he dispatched her quickly. He turned around and then raised his hands, focusing the Force to blast open the doors to the throne room. The doors to the throne room exploded inward. Without hesitation, Revan charged inside, quickly dispatching yet another guard. Behind him, Surik and Scourge continued to battle the remaining guards. To delay reinforcements, Revan reached out through the Force and collapsed the stone archway leading into the hallway, burying it in rubble. As Surik and Scourge beat their last opponents and entered the throne room, Revan slammed the throne room doors shut and ordered T3 to seal them. Turning to face the throne, Revan found the Emperor seated in his throne. He hadn't moved a single bit ever since Revan had entered. As the Emperor started to speak, Revan decided to ignore these words and leaped forward towards him. As the Emperor rose, he unleashed a powerful wave of dark energy. It lifted Revan off his feet and hurled him across the chamber, but Revan rolled to his feet and advanced yet again. This time, he embraced the Force entirely, both the light and the dark. Letting go of his limits, he channeled the raw essence of the Force itself. The air between them shimmered with power as Revan released it. The blast sent both him and the Emperor flying backward. Recovering quickly, Revan charged again. The Emperor filed a bolt of lightning. Revan deflected it. Another came, he knocked it aside. A third, he dodged. A fourth, he redirected back at the Emperor. Snarling, the Sith Lord raised his hands and summoned a storm of lightning more powerful than ever before. Revan tried to absorb it as he had before, but the sheer intensity overwhelmed him. He felt electricity ripping through his body. His mask burned against his skin as the heat seared his face. Revan collapsed to his knees, barely conscious. T3M4 then rolled forward, deploying his flamethrower in a desperate attempt to draw the Emperor's attention. It worked. The Emperor turned and destroyed the droid in an instant with the Force, obliterating Revan's faithful companion. His sacrifice was not in vain, though. He had bought them enough time for Meetra, Surik, and Scourge to arrive at Revan's side, just before the Emperor could land a final blow on Revan. The Emperor slowly turned his gaze to Scourge, expressing his disappointment. Revan then stood up, despite his pain, and declared that Scourge was with him. As the trio stood there, prepared to engage the Emperor together, Scourge was suddenly overcome by a vision of the future. In it, he saw another Jedi Knight who was neither Revan nor Surik, defeating the Emperor. The Force had shown him a path. Acting on that vision, having learned to trust them due to the conversation with Revan on them, Scourge stepped behind Surik and drove his lightsaber into her back. Revan was in shock. The Force cried out as he felt his friend dying. He hadn't expected this betrayal, so close to their victory. Surik's body went numb and fell to the floor. Before Revan could react, the Emperor struck him with a bolt of lightning, knocking him unconscious. To test Scourge's loyalty, the Emperor commanded him to finish Revan, but at the last moment, he strayed Scourge's hand. Instead, he ordered that Revan be imprisoned. Revan was transported across the galaxy to a secret installation at the heart of the Maelstrom Nebula. There, in the Emperor's specially designed prison, Revan was suspended in stasis and hovered between life and death. The Sith ruler connected his mind to Revan's, feeding off the Jedi's strength to fuel his own. Through Revan, the Emperor hoped to gain more knowledge of the Republic, but Revan resisted. His will, unbroken by torture, became the wall the Emperor could not breach. Surik's Force Ghost also lingered at Revan's side, lending her strength to his fractured mind. Together, they kept the Emperor at bay. However, Revan at this point was little more than thought in essence, being severely weakened. Despite this, he used his connection to the Emperor in reverse. Whenever he got the chance, he dulled the Emperor's aggression and also fed him false information on the Republic's strength. With that, he was able to slow the Emperor's plans on invading the Republic down. For 300 years, Revan delayed the Emperor's invasion. During that time, his son, Vaynor, grew up and the Republic and the galaxy were at peace. He had gifted his son a peaceful life, thus achieving his goal of protecting him. His son continued the Shan family line, which included a lot of Jedi, including Tessiel Shan and her daughter Satil Shan, who would become the youngest Grand Master of the Jedi Order at the time. Over the centuries of torment, though, Revan's mind began to fracture. The Dreadmasters who were guarding him constantly tortured him and tried to mold him into a servant for the Emperor, but Revan endured. In the greater galaxy, the myth of Revan endured. On Dromund Kaas, the Order of Revan emerged as followers who believed in his philosophy of balance between light and dark became more vocal. They viewed him as both savior and martyr, a being reborn through every trial. These Revanites, as they called themselves, built shrines in his honor. They believed he had not only faced the Emperor, but become him. They were wrong, but not entirely. Revan still lived, broken, buried, but still unbowing. And one day he would rise again. Chapter 16, One Last Stand. Despite Revan's efforts to delay Vitiate, the Sith Empire eventually launched a full-scale invasion of the Republic in 3681 BBY, igniting the Great Galactic War. The conflict would rage for nearly 3 decades, yet Revan's lingering influence continued to shape events from within the Emperor's mind. Through that influence, the Sith Emperor eventually chose to halt the war. In 3653 BBY, after the Empire's sacking of the Republic capital of Coruscant, they agreed on a ceasefire by forcing the Republic to sign the Treaty of Coruscant. A Cold War followed. But in 3642 BBY, that fragile peace began to unravel. The Emperor, now seeking to complete a dark ritual designed to annihilate all life in the galaxy, stirred once more. Sensing the rising threat, the Force Ghost of Meetra Surik reached out to Jedi Master Oteg and guided him to form a rescue mission. A Republic strike team went on to infiltrate the Maelstrom prison to rescue the Jedi who had resisted the Emperor for centuries. After fighting their way through, the strike team deactivated Revan's prison. Freed from stasis, Revan initially reacted in horror. His release meant he could no longer suppress the Emperor's will through their mental link. But Surik's spirit calmed him, reassuring her old friend that he had to be freed before his strength failed entirely. The strike team took Revan with them, escaping the Maelstrom and rendezvousing on Master Oteg's flagship. Revan thanked his rescuers and declared his intention to end the Sith threat once and for all. He was taken to Tython, home of the Jedi Order, where he shared his knowledge on the Emperor's intention to use a ritual to consume all life. But Revan wasn't content to just stay on Tython to remain under the Jedi's supervision. He saw defeating the Emperor as a task that he alone could achieve. He went on to leave Tython and scoured the galaxy to find his old assassin droid, HK-47, who had waited for all those years for him to return. Reuniting with the droid, Revan next sought out the Foundry, a Rakatan space station he had once discovered and kept hidden from the Emperor. With the Foundry, Revan began constructing a new army of extermination droids designed to wipe out the Sith, especially those with pureblood ancestry. HK-47 was placed in command, who happily embraced his long-dormant assassination protocols. However, the Emperor was aware that Revan had freed himself, deeming him too dangerous to be left alive. He sent an Imperial strike team to take Revan out, once and for all. The elite strike team infiltrated the facility, fought through the Foundry's defenses, and eventually destroyed HK-47 in the generator chamber. As the strike team entered Revan's sanctum, he confronted them personally. Donning his mask and igniting his violet lightsaber, Revan explained that the Emperor's death was his burden and his alone. A duel ensued. Revan hurled lightning and tore debris from the Foundry's asteroid shell, fighting off the strike team. But despite all his strength, Revan was eventually overwhelmed by the Sith forces. He had been hit mortally. As he lay there dying, he echoed the words once spoken by Malak. In the end, as darkness falls in, he is nothing. Finally understanding what his fallen friend had felt at the end. He had failed the galaxy. Vitiate reign was still thriving, and now he could no longer influence it. In a flash of violet energy, Revan vanished. Chapter 17. Dark Side Once More. Having finally died, after having long outlived his original lifespan, Revan attempted to merge with the Force. He only succeeded partially, however. The light side within him passed on into the Force, but the dark part of his soul, the hatred, the pain, the trauma of centuries of imprisonment and torture refused to let go. His dark half reawakened in his body, convinced that he was now free of weakness. His purpose was clear: destroy the Emperor by any means necessary. The dark side of the Force, clinging on to life, had granted him a way to overcome the mortal wound. To begin, the dark side of Revan reclaimed control over the Revanites. He purged their ranks and rebuilt the cult into a zealous order loyal only to him. They pursued a new project, an infinite army. To achieve that, they used fragments of the shattered Starforge on Lehon by infusing them into soldiers, allowing them to rapidly heal themselves as well as increasing their strength. But their plans were disrupted when a joint Republic Imperial strike team destroyed the Infinite Army project. Revan remained determined, though. He had to kill the Emperor no matter what. However, it was at this time that the Emperor had just been beaten by the hero of Tython. Scourge's vision had come to fruition at last. The Emperor was gone. The dark side of Revan, though, didn't see this as a victory. He wanted to be the one to destroy the Emperor. In a final plan, he invaded Yavin 4 with the full strength of the Revanites, overpowering the Imperial Guard stationed at the Temple of Sacrifice. There, he intended to complete a Sith ritual that would restore the Emperor's essence and restore him back to strength, just in order to beat him once more. Horrified at the prospect of the Emperor coming back, a coalition of Republic and Sith Imperial forces united in the face of a greater threat. As Revan prepared the ritual, they stormed the temple. Unbeknownst to him, the light half of his soul had re-emerged as a Force spirit. His light side spirit warned the coalition that the Dark Revan was not whole, not truly himself. In the ensuing battle, the ritual machinery was destroyed, forcing Revan to flee to a second temple deep in the jungle, the Emperor's final sanctuary. There, Revan made his last stand. Among those who confronted him were Satele Shan, Grand Master of the Jedi, and Theron Shan, both descendants of his. Despite being outnumbered greatly, Revan held his own against the coalition for some time. However, eventually they managed to wear him down and beat him. As Revan lay there, beaten, he was horrified to hear the Emperor's mocking laughter. The chaos and deaths at the sanctuary had fed the Emperor's spirit, allowing him to regain power and vanish from Yavin 4. Crushed by his failure yet again, the Dark Revan raged. It was a disaster. It was all for nothing. His light side other half appeared then, pleading with him to let go and finally find peace. With that, the dark side of Revan finally gave up. As the two halves merged, with their mind and soul united at last, Revan vanished, finally becoming one with the Force. All that remained was his mask and his purple lightsaber. Chapter 18, Epilogue. Even after death, Revan's journey continued. During the Third Galactic War, his spirit continued guiding the commander of the Eternal Alliance, known as the Outlander, as well as his former ally Scourge, who still kept fighting against the Emperor. During the final confrontation within the Outlander's mind against Darth Vitiate's three different forms, Revan's and Surik's spirits were present to help defeat the Emperor. With Vitiate defeated once and for all, Revan finally found peace. At last, he became one with the Force.